So I'm sitting here at my mom's kitchen table in Raleigh at 3 a.m., and I genuinely don't know how I'm supposed to process the last 72 hours of my life. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and this will have been some twisted nightmare, but every time I look at my bare ring finger, I remember it's all real. I was with Mason for almost 4 years. We moved in together after a year, got engaged, and were supposed to get married in 25 days. I had the dress. The venue was booked. We just finished paying the caterer. That Thursday night, we were sitting at our dining room table addressing wedding invitations. We had this whole system going where I'd write the addresses and he'd stuff and seal because my handwriting is better. But I'm terrible at getting envelopes closed without them looking like a toddler did it. We had music playing, some wine. A bunch of our friends saved the dates stuck to the fridge behind us. It felt so normal, so domestic and boring and perfect. Then someone knocked on the door. It was almost 11 p.m., which is already weird because who shows up unannounced that late on a weeknight? Mason looked at me and I looked at him, and neither of us moved at first. The knock came again, harder this time, and then we heard footsteps running away. Like actually running fast, down our front steps, and then a car starting somewhere down the street. I got up to look through the peephole and saw nothing, so I opened the door. There was a car seat on our welcome mat. One of those infant carriers with the handle, gray and pink with little elephants on the padding. And inside was a sleeping baby. A baby. Just sitting there on my doorstep like someone had left a package from Amazon. I literally just stood there with my hand on the doorframe trying to make my brain understand what I was looking at. Mason came up behind me asking what was going on, and when he saw the car seat, he made this sound, this weird strangled noise that I've never heard come out of a human being before. There was a note tucked into the side of the carrier. I grabbed it before he could, and it said, and I will never forget these words as long as I live. It said, "Ask him about summer 2022. She's 18 months old. I'm done covering for him." I turned around to look at Mason, and this man I was supposed to marry in less than a month, was white as a sheet, like actually gray looking, the color people get before they pass out. And he started stuttering, tripping over his own words, saying, "She's crazy. This is a setup. I've never seen this baby before in my life. Someone is trying to ruin us. You have to believe me." The baby started crying. This tiny little girl with dark curly hair woke up and started wailing, and I just instinctively bent down to pick her up. Because what else are you supposed to do when there's a screaming infant on your porch at 11 p.m.? And that's when I noticed what she was wrapped in. It was a hoodie. A faded maroon hoodie with our university logo on the front and the number 34 on the sleeve. Mason's number from intramural basketball. The same hoodie he told me he lost at the gym last year. The one I looked everywhere for because it was his favorite and he was so upset about losing it. I asked him why this baby was wrapped in his hoodie. The one he said was gone. The one that was supposedly stolen from his gym locker. And this man, I swear to God, looked me dead in the eyes and said someone must have taken it and given it to this woman to frame him. That someone was clearly setting him up and I needed to calm down and think rationally about this. Calm down. While I'm holding a baby that just appeared on my doorstep, wrapped in his missing clothes with a note about summer 2022, which, by the way, was when we'd been together for almost a year, and he went to visit his college roommate in Atlanta for a week. I asked him point blank. I said, "Mason, is this your baby?" And he said, "No, absolutely not. This is insane. Why would you even ask me that?" The diaper bag was sitting next to the car seat. One of those big backpack-style ones in black. I carried the baby inside and grabbed the bag and started going through it because I needed something. Some kind of information about who this child was and where she came from. There were diapers, wipes, formula, a few changes of clothes, a stuffed bunny that looked well-loved. And at the bottom, in a folder, was a DNA test. I pulled it out and Mason's face changed completely. He went from defensive and angry to absolutely terrified in about half a second. The test was from one of those official labs, not a home kit. It had his full legal name on it, and it said 99.9% probability of paternity. I held it up and asked him to explain this. To explain how a legitimate DNA test with his name on it ended up in a diaper bag with a baby who just got dropped on our doorstep. And he still tried to deny it. Said it had to be fake. Said anyone could print something like that. Said I was being manipulated by whoever was doing this to us. The baby was still crying. She couldn't have cared less that my entire life was falling apart around her. She just wanted to be fed. I found a bottle in the bag and made formula one-handed while Mason paced around our living room having what looked like a complete breakdown. And I'm watching him spiral, and all I can think is that I'm supposed to walk down an aisle toward this person in 25 days. My dad is supposed to give me away to this. About 20 minutes later, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his whole body went rigid. I asked who it was and he didn't answer. Just kept staring at his phone like it was going to bite him. I told him to answer it or I would, and he finally picked up. I couldn't hear the whole conversation, but I heard enough. His mother's voice came through clear as day asking if the baby arrived okay. If the baby arrived okay. Not what baby, or what are you talking about, or any normal response a person would have if they didn't know their son had a secret child. She asked if the baby arrived like she'd been expecting this, like they'd discussed it beforehand. Mason walked into the other room, but I followed him. I wasn't about to let him have a private conversation about the baby I was currently holding. He kept saying, "Mom, stop. Mom, not right now. Mom, I can't talk about this." And I could hear her getting more agitated through the phone. Something about how they'd all agreed this would stay quiet, and Dina had no right to do this, and she'd been promised this wouldn't affect the wedding. Dina, a name, finally some actual information instead of lies. Mason hung up and turned around and saw me standing there, and for a second neither of us said anything. Then I asked him who Dina was. He closed his eyes like he was in physical pain and said she was nobody, just someone he used to know. I told him I wasn't stupid. I said his mother clearly knows about this baby, clearly knows about some agreement to keep it quiet, clearly knows who Dina is. So he could either start telling me the truth right now, or I was walking out that door with my car keys and driving to his parents' house to get answers myself. That's when Mason finally started talking. And honestly, I almost wish he hadn't, because the truth was so much worse than I could have imagined. He said Dina was someone he met at a bar during that Atlanta trip in summer 2022, one of his college roommate's coworkers. They hooked up a few times over the week he was there, and he thought that was the end of it. But she got pregnant and reached out to him about 5 months later, right around the time he and I were starting to talk about moving in together. I asked him why he never told me, why he hid an entire pregnancy and child from me for over a year, and he said he didn't know for sure it was his at first, that Dina had been seeing other people too, that he didn't want to worry me about something that might not even be his problem. But then the DNA test came back, that test in the diaper bag, and he knew. He'd known since this baby was maybe 4 months old that he was her father, and he never said a single word to me. I asked him what the arrangement was, what his mother meant by keeping it quiet, and he said Dina agreed to handle everything herself, that he would contribute financially but stay out of the child's life because he didn't want to complicate things with me. He said his parents knew because they helped him set up the payments, helped him figure out how to keep everything separate so I wouldn't find out. His parents, who I've had dinner with every other Sunday for the last 2 years, who helped us pick out our venue, who I thought loved me and welcomed me into their family. They've all been lying to my face this entire time. I asked him if anyone else knew. He admitted his sister Marcella knew, his brother Hunter knew. Basically, his entire immediate family had been keeping this secret from me while I planned a wedding to a man with a hidden child. The baby had fallen asleep in my arms by this point. She was so small and warm and completely innocent in all of this, and I felt so unbearably sad looking at her. This little girl whose father was apparently so ashamed of her existence that he'd been paying her mother to pretend she didn't exist. I asked what happened with Dina, why she suddenly showed up after 18 months of apparently going along with this arrangement. Mason said he didn't know. Said Dina had been fine with everything until a few weeks ago when she started asking questions about when he was going to tell me, when he was going to be an actual father to their daughter, whether he was really going to marry someone who didn't know the truth. He said he told her nothing was changing, that the agreement was the agreement, and she'd stopped responding to his messages. So she decided to just deliver his daughter to my doorstep instead. Nuclear option. I asked him what he expected to happen, if he really thought he was going to marry me, and just keep paying this woman indefinitely, while their daughter grew up without ever knowing her father. He said he thought maybe eventually, after we were married and settled, he could figure out a way to tell me, that he was always planning to tell me someday. Someday, not before our wedding, not before I signed a legal document binding myself to him, not before I made vows to spend my life with someone who'd been lying to me about something this massive, just someday, whenever it was convenient for him. I put the baby down on the couch surrounded by pillows, and I told Mason I needed him to leave, to go to his parents' house or his brother's or literally anywhere else because I could not look at him anymore. He started crying. This grown man started sobbing and begging me to just talk to him, to let him explain, saying he loved me and he never meant to hurt me and we could work through this together. And yeah, maybe I'm heartless, but I felt nothing, just cold and empty and so incredibly tired. He asked what was going to happen with the baby. Where was she going to go? And I told him I didn't know, but that wasn't really my problem since apparently I wasn't supposed to know she existed in the first place. Mason left around 1 a.m., just grabbed his keys and wallet and walked out the front door still crying. I stood in my living room holding my phone, staring at the sleeping baby on my couch, and tried to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do next. I called my mom. It was the middle of the night, but she picked up on the second ring because moms have that sixth sense about things. I told her what happened and she was quiet for a long moment, and then she said, "Pack a bag, bring the baby, and come home." So that's what I did. The drive from our apartment to my mom's house is about 40 minutes. I spent the whole time going over every conversation, every weekend trip. Every time Mason's family looked at me across a dinner table knowing they were keeping this massive secret. His mom who helped me pick out my wedding shoes. His dad who taught me how to grill a proper steak. His sister who was supposed to be one of my bridesmaids. The next morning, Mason's mom called me. Not him, his mother. And she had the absolute audacity to ask me to please be reasonable about this. To consider how much stress this was putting on the whole family. She said Dina had gone back on her word and that wasn't Mason's fault. That he'd tried to do the right thing by making sure the child was provided for. And now I was punishing him for someone else's decision. I asked her if she thought the right thing was lying to me for 18 months. She said sometimes people make difficult choices to protect the people they love, and she hoped I could find it in my heart to understand that. I hung up on her. Mason started texting around noon. Long messages about how much he loved me, how sorry he was, how he knew he'd messed up but we could get through this if I just gave him a chance. He said the wedding was still on the table, that we didn't have to cancel anything yet, that we should take a few days and then sit down and talk about our future. Our future. Like we still had one. Like finding out your fiancé has a secret child and his whole family helped cover it up is just a bump in the road. My phone blew up all day. His sister texted asking if I was okay, which felt rich coming from someone who'd known about this for over a year. His brother sent some message about how Mason really did love me, and this didn't change that. Even his dad reached out saying he hoped I could forgive them all someday because they were just trying to protect everyone. Protect who? Certainly not me. Certainly not Dina, who'd apparently been raising a baby alone while the father sent checks and pretended she didn't exist. Certainly not this little girl who was currently sleeping in a pack and play in my childhood bedroom because she had nowhere else to go. That first day, I focused on practical things, because if I stopped moving, I was going to lose my mind. I called our venue to ask about their cancellation policy. I called the caterer. I called the florist. Every single conversation was this humiliating exercise in explaining that no, actually the wedding wasn't happening anymore, and no, I didn't want to reschedule, and no, I couldn't really go into details, but please just process the refund. My best friend Becky came over that evening. She'd been getting a steady stream of panicked texts from me and showed up with wine and takeout and just sat with me while I went through everything again. She said the only question that mattered right now was what did I actually want to do? Not what Mason wanted, not what his family expected. What did I want? The baby woke up crying around 8 p.m. and Becky helped me feed her and change her, and she's looking at me with those big brown eyes that look so much like Mason's it actually hurts. This tiny, perfect, innocent person who didn't ask to be born into this mess. I didn't know what was going to happen with her. Dina clearly wasn't coming back anytime soon given the whole dramatic doorstep drop-off. Mason was texting me constantly but never once asked about his daughter, never asked if she was okay or where she was staying or if she needed anything. His parents hadn't asked either. Nobody seemed to care about this actual living child except me and my mom and Becky. On day 2, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It said, "This is Dina, we need to talk." And that's where things got really complicated. First update. So I left off with Dina texting me saying we need to talk. A lot of you in the comments were telling me not to respond, that it was a trap or she was trying to manipulate me. But honestly, I was desperate for answers that weren't filtered through Mason's lies. I still hadn't gotten a straight story out of anyone in his family, and I was losing my mind trying to piece together what was actually true. I texted back asking what she wanted. She responded almost immediately saying she wanted to explain her side and figure out what was happening with their daughter. Not my daughter or the baby, but their daughter. I noticed that wording. She was still framing this as something that involved Mason, still expecting him to be part of this child's life somehow. Like he hadn't spent 18 months pretending she didn't exist. I told her I wasn't interested in being in the middle of whatever was going on between her and Mason. She said she understood, but she also wasn't leaving her daughter with a stranger indefinitely, and she needed to know what the plan was. That set me off because, excuse me? She left a baby on my doorstep without warning, without asking, without any kind of coordination, and now she was acting like I was the one creating problems? I told her that if she wanted her daughter back, she could come get her anytime, that I never asked to be involved in any of this, that she made me part of this mess without my consent. Who does that? Who just drops a baby on someone's porch and drives away? She didn't respond for about an hour. When she finally texted again, she said she knew it was wrong to do it that way, but she was out of options. That she'd been trying to get Mason to tell me for months, and he kept promising he would and never did. That she couldn't keep being his dirty secret while he married someone who had no idea she existed. I asked her what exactly she thought was going to happen. Like, did she imagine Mason was going to step up and be a real father just because she forced the issue? Did she think I was going to, what? Adopt his secret baby and play happy family? Did she think this through at all? Or did she just want to blow up my life because hers was already a mess? She said she didn't know what she expected. She just knew she couldn't keep living the way she'd been living. Being paid to stay quiet, watching Mason post photos of his perfect life with his perfect fiancé while she was home alone with a toddler he refused to acknowledge. I told her I'd bring her daughter to her if she gave me an address. She lived about 2 hours away in a smaller town outside Charlotte. She said she could meet me halfway the next day, and I agreed because honestly, I couldn't keep taking care of this baby indefinitely. My mom was helping, but neither of us signed up for this, and I still had my own life falling apart to deal with. That night, Mason showed up at my mom's house. I hadn't told him where I was, but it wasn't hard to figure out. My mom's address hasn't changed since I was in middle school. I heard his car pull into the driveway around 8 p.m., and my whole body tensed up. My mom asked if I wanted her to tell him to leave, but I said no. I needed to actually talk to him face to face. I needed to look him in the eyes while he tried to explain himself because I was done getting half-truths through text messages. I went out to the front porch because I wasn't letting him inside. He started talking before I even got down the steps. This whole rushing stream of apologies and excuses, and please just let me explain. I told him he had exactly one chance to tell me the complete truth about everything, and if I found out later he was still lying about anything, then we were done forever. No more chances, no more conversations. He nodded and said, okay. He would tell me everything. So I asked him to start from the beginning. Not the version he told me the night the baby showed up. The real beginning. He said he met Dina in Atlanta like he'd said before. But it wasn't just some random hookup at a bar. He'd known her from college, she was a year behind him, and when he found out she'd moved to Atlanta, he reached out to see her. They'd hooked up a few times back in school. And he figured why not reconnect while he was in town? Why not? Why not? Like I didn't exist. Like we hadn't been together for almost a year at that point. Like reconnecting with an old hookup was just a casual decision with no consequences. I asked him if he knew she had feelings for him, if he knew she thought it was more than casual. He admitted he probably should have realized that she'd always been more into him than he was into her, even back in college. But he told himself they were both adults and she knew what she was getting into. I asked if he told her about me, about having a girlfriend back home that he was serious about. He said no. He didn't tell her about me until she called him a few months later saying she was pregnant. And by then it was too late to pretend he hadn't been cheating. So he knew. He knew when he was sleeping with her that he was cheating on me. It wasn't some drunken mistake or moment of weakness or any of the other excuses people make. He deliberately reconnected with an ex-hookup, deliberately didn't mention me, and deliberately chose to cheat multiple times over the course of a week. Multiple times. This wasn't one night of bad judgment. This was a week of choices. I asked him what happened when she told him about the pregnancy. He said he panicked, told her he had a girlfriend, told her he couldn't be involved, asked her what she was going to do about it. And she got upset, obviously, because she'd just found out the guy she'd been sleeping with had been lying to her too. She decided to keep the baby. He said he tried to talk her out of it at first, offered to pay for whatever she needed if she made a different choice, but she said no. So then he had to figure out what to do. That's when he told his parents. I asked why them? Why not just deal with it himself? And he said because his dad had a lawyer friend who could help draw up some kind of informal agreement. His mom helped him figure out how much money to send each month. His whole family got involved in managing his mistake and making sure I never found out about it. His whole family. These people I've been having dinner with for years, who I thought loved me, who helped us pick our venue and address invitations and plan a wedding. All of them knew. All of them looked at me and smiled and pretended everything was fine while they were actively helping Mason hide a child from me. I asked if they ever considered just telling me, any of them. His parents, his siblings, anyone. And he said his mom was against it from the start. She said I'd probably leave him and why ruin a good relationship over one mistake. That Dina was taken care of financially, the baby would be provided for, and there was no reason to blow up everyone's lives. One mistake. Like it was a parking ticket or forgetting someone's birthday. Not an entire secret child that he'd been actively hiding for almost 2 years while planning a wedding with me. I asked him about the arrangement with Dina. What exactly had been agreed to? He said he sent her money every month, enough to cover childcare and basics. In exchange, she agreed to handle everything herself and not contact me or post about him on social media or do anything that would out him as the father. She could tell her own friends and family whatever she wanted as long as she kept him out of it publicly. So he was paying her to pretend he didn't exist. To raise his daughter alone while he lived his perfect life with me. To be a single mom in secret while he played house and planned a wedding. I asked if he ever saw the baby, his daughter, if he'd met her at all. He got quiet for a second and then admitted he'd seen her twice. Once right after she was born when Dina demanded he at least come see her in the hospital. And once more about 6 months ago when Dina was struggling and asked him to come help for a weekend. 6 months ago? 6 months ago. That was right around the time we got engaged. I remembered that weekend because he said he had to go to a conference. I was annoyed he was missing the engagement party Becky was throwing for us. I complained to my friends about how his work was always getting in the way. I made excuses for him. He missed our engagement party to go play daddy for the secret baby his mother told him to pretend didn't exist. I literally had to sit down on the porch steps because I thought I might pass out. All those people at that party asking where Mason was, me explaining he had work stuff, Becky giving me sympathetic looks, and the whole time he was in Charlotte holding the baby he'd been hiding from me for over a year. I asked him if he felt anything. When he held his daughter for the first time, when he looked at this tiny person he'd created, he said of course he did. He said he cried. He said it was the hardest thing he'd ever done to walk away from her and come back to me and pretend everything was normal. Pretend everything was normal. Like that's some kind of sacrifice, like I should feel bad for him that lying to me was emotionally difficult. He came back from that weekend and we celebrated our engagement and he never said a word. He looked me in the eyes and talked about our future and the whole time he'd just been holding his secret daughter. I asked what changed with Dina. Why she suddenly decided to blow everything up 3 weeks before our wedding. He said she'd been getting more insistent over the last few months. Asking when he was going to step up, when he was going to be a real father, when he was going to tell me the truth. She kept saying it wasn't fair to their daughter to grow up thinking her father didn't want her. She kept pushing him to choose, and he kept putting her off, saying after the wedding, saying soon, saying he just needed more time, until she stopped accepting those answers. I asked him what exactly he thought was going to happen after we got married. Was he just planning to keep paying Dina forever and hope I never found out? Was he ever actually going to tell me? He said he didn't know. He said he kept telling himself he'd figure it out eventually, but he just kept pushing it down and focusing on us and hoping somehow it would all work out. I actually laughed. This bitter, horrible laugh because the delusion was so complete I couldn't even process it. He was really just going to keep lying indefinitely and hope for the best. That was his entire plan. No actual solution, no accountability, just vibes and prayers that his secret baby would stay secret forever, while I walked down an aisle and promised to spend my life with a stranger. I asked him one more question. I asked if he loved Dina, if there was ever any part of him that wanted to be with her instead of me. He said no, absolutely not. He said Dina was a mistake he'd been trying to manage and I was the person he actually wanted to spend his life with. He said he loved me and only me and he would do anything to fix this if I just gave him a chance. I told him I needed time to think. He asked if that meant there was still hope for us and I said I didn't know. I was so tired, so overwhelmed. I couldn't make any decisions when I could barely stand up straight. He asked if he could come inside and see the baby. I told him absolutely not. I said he'd had 18 months to see his daughter and he chose not to. So he didn't get to play concerned father now just because it might score him points with me. He lost the right to act like he cared about that child when he missed her first steps and first words, so he could keep lying to me about her existence. He left after that. I sat on my mom's porch for probably an hour just staring at nothing. The next day I drove to meet Dina at a gas station about halfway between us. My mom wanted to come, but I told her I needed to do this alone. I put Lily in her car seat and loaded up all the stuff from the diaper bag and made the hour drive listening to nothing but silence. Dina was already there when I arrived. She was standing by an older model SUV watching me pull in. Dark hair pulled back, no makeup, wearing joggers and an oversized sweatshirt. She looked exhausted in a way that went beyond just not sleeping. She looked like someone who'd been carrying something heavy for a very long time. I got out and went around to get Lily, and she immediately started fussing over her, checking her diaper and her temperature and asking if she'd been eating okay. Lily reached for her mom and made this happy little sound, and I just stood there watching this reunion that I had no part in, but somehow had been dragged into anyway. I handed over the diaper bag and she turned back to me and said thank you for taking care of her, that she knew I didn't have to do that. I told her I wasn't going to leave a baby on my porch in the middle of the night, that I was a decent person even if the father of that baby wasn't. She flinched a little at that, but didn't argue. She asked if I'd talked to Mason. I said I had. She asked what he told me, and I gave her the short version. She listened, and then said there were some things he'd left out. Like what? I asked. She said the arrangement wasn't her idea, that when she first told Mason she was pregnant and wanted to keep the baby, she asked him to be involved. Not as a boyfriend or partner, but as a father to their child. She wanted to co-parent. Wanted their daughter to know her dad, wanted to figure out something that worked for everyone. But Mason said no. He said his family had money and influence, and if she tried to force the issue, they would make her life difficult. So he offered her a different deal. Monthly payments, generous ones, in exchange for staying out of his life and letting him pretend none of this ever happened. She was 24 and alone and scared, and she took the deal because she didn't know what else to do. I stood there in that gas station parking lot trying to process this. Mason had essentially threatened her. Used his family's money and status to scare a pregnant woman into silence. This wasn't just lying to me. This was using power over someone vulnerable to protect himself. I asked why she was telling me this, what she wanted from me. She said she didn't want anything from me. She was done feeling guilty for existing. For 18 months, she'd been treated like a shameful secret, paid off like some kind of inconvenience, and she was over it. Mason was Lily's father whether he liked it or not, and he was going to have to deal with that eventually. I asked what was going to happen now. With Lily, with Mason, with all of it. She said she was planning to pursue legal custody arrangements. No more under-the-table payments and gentlemen's agreements. She wanted a formal custody order and legal child support and Mason's name on the birth certificate. She said she'd held off because she didn't want to cause drama, but clearly keeping quiet wasn't working for anyone. She got in her car and drove away with Lily waving at me from her car seat. I sat in my car for probably 20 minutes before I could make myself drive home. When I got back to my mom's house, Mason's sister Marcella was sitting in the living room. My mom looked apologetic and said Marcella had shown up about an hour after I left and insisted on waiting. Marcella stood up when I came in and said she really needed to talk to me, that she knew I was angry with all of them, but there were things I needed to understand. I was exhausted. I was done. But I also wanted to hear what she had to say, because Marcella was supposed to be one of my bridesmaids. She was going to stand next to me at my wedding, and she'd known about this the entire time. I sat down across from her and told her she had 5 minutes. She said the whole family felt terrible about how this had all come out. That they never meant to hurt me, that they genuinely cared about me, that everything they did was to protect the family, including me. Including me. I asked her how exactly lying to me for 18 months was protecting me. She said looking back, she wished she'd said something sooner, that she'd felt guilty every time she saw me, but she'd convinced herself it wasn't her secret to tell, that Mason would handle it eventually and she didn't want to interfere. I asked her what she actually wanted. Was she here to convince me to forgive Mason, to take him back and go through with the wedding like nothing happened? She got quiet for a moment and then said no, actually. She was here because she thought I deserved to know the whole picture before I made any decisions. And there was something Mason hadn't told me. I waited. She said Mason had been talking to their parents about what to do if Dina ever became a problem. Contingency planning, she called it. And part of that plan involved claiming Dina was mentally unstable if she ever tried to go public. They had a whole strategy ready to discredit her, make her look like a crazy ex who was obsessed with Mason, suggest the baby might not even be his despite the DNA test. They were going to destroy this woman, a single mother who'd been raising their grandchild alone. They were prepared to lie about her mental health, attack her character, make her look like an unhinged stalker. all to protect Mason's reputation and their family image. She left after that. My mom sat down next to me and didn't say anything, just put her hand on mine. I told her I felt like I was in someone else's nightmare. 2 weeks ago, I was addressing wedding invitations with the man I was going to marry. Now I was finding out his family had backup plans to destroy a single mother if she ever stepped out of line. These people were going to be my in-laws. I was going to have children with a man whose family thought the appropriate response to an inconvenient truth was character assassination. Mason texted that night asking if we could talk again. He said he wanted to see me, really see me, and have a real conversation about our future. He said he was willing to do whatever it took. I stared at that message for 20 minutes. Whatever it took. Like there was some combination of words or promises that could undo 18 months of lies. Like I could just forget that his family had a plan to destroy Dina if she ever told the truth. Like any of this was fixable. The next morning I woke up to 17 missed calls from Mason's mom. Final update. Okay, so this is probably my last update because I physically cannot keep rehashing this nightmare, but I also feel like I owe everyone the full picture of how this all went down. So I woke up to 17 missed calls from Mason's mom. I didn't call her back. Instead, I took a shower, made coffee, and sat with my mom at the kitchen table trying to figure out what to do next. About an hour later, there was a knock at the door and I already knew who it was before I even looked. Mason's mom was standing on my mother's porch. She asked if we could talk and I said fine, but my mom was staying. We all sat down in the living room and she launched into this whole speech about how she understood I was upset, but I needed to consider the bigger picture. She talked about how much Mason loved me, how the wedding was so close, how much money everyone had invested, how embarrassed the family would be if we canceled now. She actually said the word embarrassed like that was supposed to matter to me, like her embarrassment was the issue here. Like I should care about her country club reputation when her son had been lying to my face for 2 years. I let her finish and then I asked her point blank why she thought any of that should matter, more than the fact that her son lied to me for almost 2 years, that she lied to me, that the whole family sat around Sunday dinners looking me in the face knowing they were helping hide a secret child. I helped this woman pick out tablecloths for the rehearsal dinner. She cried when Mason proposed. She hugged me and said she couldn't wait to have me as a daughter, all while knowing. She said she was trying to protect her son and his future, that Dina was a mistake and mistakes shouldn't define someone's whole life. She said Mason deserved a chance to be happy and I was the person who made him happy. I asked her about the plan to discredit Dina if she ever went public. I watched her face change when I said that. She asked where I heard that, and I told her it didn't matter where I heard it. What mattered was whether it was true. She tried to deflect, saying they were just discussing hypotheticals, that any good family would protect their own, that Dina had agreed to stay quiet and then broke her word, so really she was the one who couldn't be trusted. The audacity. Blaming the woman who'd been raising Mason's baby alone for 18 months while he played house with me. My mom spoke up then. She said, with all due respect, the only person who broke trust was Mason when he cheated on her daughter, and then lied about it for 18 months. She said whatever arrangement was made with Dina didn't change the fundamental betrayal that had happened. Mason's mom got this pinched look on her face like she'd just bitten into something sour. She said she didn't come here to be lectured. She came here to try to save her son's relationship with the woman he loved. I told her it was too late for that. That even if I could somehow forgive Mason for the cheating and the lying, I could never trust his family again. I said I saw how they operated now. How they closed ranks and covered things up, and were willing to destroy an innocent woman's reputation to protect their image. I told her I spent 4 years thinking I was part of this family, and the whole time I was just the idiot who didn't know the truth. She stood up and said I was making a huge mistake, that I was throwing away a good man over one indiscretion. One indiscretion. Like cheating and creating a whole human being and hiding it for 18 months is the same as forgetting to take out the trash. I told her to get out of my mother's house. She looked at my mom like she expected backup, and my mom just pointed at the door. She left without saying another word. I texted Mason and told him I needed to see him one more time. He responded immediately, asking when and where. I told him to come to my mom's house in an hour. When he showed up, he looked hopeful. Like maybe he thought this was going to be a reconciliation conversation. That pissed me off even more. How could he possibly think there was anything left to save? I let him sit down across from me in the living room and I told him the wedding was off, permanently. He started arguing immediately, saying I wasn't being fair, saying he deserved a chance to make things right, saying couples get through worse than this all the time. He brought up people we knew who'd survived infidelity. He talked about therapy, about rebuilding trust, about how much he was willing to change. He actually said we could come out of this stronger. I wanted to throw something at his head. I let him talk until he ran out of words. And then I asked him one question. I asked him if he would have ever told me about Lily if Dina hadn't forced his hand. If she'd kept quiet forever, would he have kept lying to me forever too? He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. He finally admitted he didn't know. He said he kept telling himself he would find the right time, but the right time never came, and eventually it just felt too late to say anything. He said he was afraid of losing me, and he convinced himself that what I didn't know couldn't hurt me. I told him that was exactly the problem, that he made that decision for me. He decided I didn't deserve to know the truth about the person I was building a life with. He decided his comfort was more important than my right to make an informed choice about my own future. I asked him how many times he looked at me and thought about telling me. How many times he almost said something and then didn't. Was it every day? Every week? Did he think about it when we were looking at venues? When I was trying on wedding dresses? When his mother was helping me address invitations to a wedding she knew was built on lies? He started crying. He said he couldn't imagine his life without me. That he'd spent years planning our future together. That he didn't know how to move forward. I told him that sounded like a him problem. And then I told him to get out. The next few days were all about cancellations. And I have never been more humiliated in my entire life. Every single phone call was me having to explain that no, the wedding wasn't happening. No, I couldn't really go into details. No, I didn't want to reschedule. I lost thousands of dollars on deposits. Money I'd saved for years. Money that was supposed to go towards starting my life with someone who turned out to be a complete stranger. My dad drove up from Florida to help me move my stuff out of the apartment. We did it while Mason was at work because I couldn't stand to look at him. 4 years of my life packed into boxes. I left the ring on the kitchen counter because I didn't even want to touch it anymore. Everyone keeps asking me if I'm okay, and I don't know how to answer that question. I'm not okay. I'm furious. I'm hurt. I wake up in the middle of the night replaying every conversation, every moment, every time Mason or his family looked at me while hiding this massive secret. I gave this man 4 years. I planned a wedding. I picked out china patterns and argued about whether to have salmon or chicken at the reception. And the whole time there was a little girl out there with his eyes and his DNA whose existence I wasn't allowed to know about. I'm staying at my mom's house and everyone keeps telling me it will get easier. That time heals everything, that I dodged a bullet. But right now it doesn't feel like I dodged anything. It feels like I got hit by a truck. I trusted someone completely, and he repaid that trust by lying to me every single day for 18 months. His whole family watched me walk toward a cliff and nobody said a word. So no, I don't have some neat, happy ending for you. What I have is a canceled wedding, an empty ring finger, thousands of dollars in lost deposits, and 4 years of my life I'll never get back. I have 17 people I thought were going to be my family who turned out to be strangers. I have a closet full of bridesmaid gift bags and a wedding dress I can't even look at. I keep thinking about what my life was supposed to look like right now. I was supposed to be 18 days away from marrying the love of my life. Instead, I'm sleeping in my childhood bedroom trying to figure out how I didn't see this coming. And the worst part? The absolute worst part? Sometimes I still miss him. The version of him I thought I knew. The person he pretended to be. And then I hate myself for missing someone who never really existed.